The answer states Negro, black, colored, and Ethiopian. Were identified with these slave marks of Negro, black, and colored, the Moors after many generations forgot the true free national name of their forefathers, thereby cutting themselves off from being a nation of people in the illustrious history of their forefathers. The beginning of this historical event occurred right here, September the 5th, 1774, here in the state of Pennsylvania, in the city of Philadelphia, first capital. On September the 5th, 1774, the Moors were a divided and defeated nation here in North America. On that date, 12 European colonies met here in Philadelphia, in this building that's known as Carpenter's Hall. It was a Masonic convention. The meeting or convention was originally called the Oddfellows Convention. The popular name of this convention, according to European history books, became known as the First Continental Congress. It must be known that these 12 colonies that met were actually European nations. In 1774, there was no United States of America. There were 13 separate colonies, each separately chartered and governed. Now, how do we get nations from 13 colonies? Each colony was composed of European nations under British rule. And we understand the reason, one of the main reasons why 1774 was chosen, because in 1772, if you know anything about the Somerset case, which was an Asiatic, a Moorish brother who was taken to England, and he was considered a slave. But once he got to England, the case was entertained by Lord Mansfield, and he was considered immediately free once he breathed the air. And at that time, the colonies were under the British Charter. So to avoid that, in regards to the freedom of the slaves, immediately they conspired to strip our ancestors of their nationality in 1774, 2 years later. The state in which we're currently in, Pennsylvania, was composed of European nations such as the Dutch, the Germans, and the Swedes. The state of New York was originally called New Netherland. That colony was named after the Duke of York, the future King James II of England. The European nations or colonies convened right here at Carpenter's Hall in 1774. The First Continental Congress met here at Carpenter's Hall from September the 5th to October the 26th, 1774, with representatives attending from all colonies except for Georgia. One of the reasons that the colonies met was to protest the intolerable acts. The two main documents that came out of the meeting of the First Continental Congress was the Declaration of Resolves, which was passed today, October the 14th, 1774, and the Articles of Association, which was passed October the 20th, 1774. At this very meeting, the issue of the justification of the enslavement of the Moorish inhabitants of this land was discussed and debated. The 12 colonies agreed to strip the Moors of their nationality and birthrights. This was an act of European psychology. The European colonists gave the Moorish population the slave marks of Negro, black, and colored, and Ethiopia, etc., and the European colonists defined these slave names as something inferior to the name white. The European colonies defined white as a color of purity and defined black as representing everything evil. White and black was also used as legal statuses, because according to the first census, white meant that you were a citizen. Black meant that you were not, but rather 3/5 of a person. When the Moorish population accepted the inferior slave marks of Negro, black, colored, etc., the Moorish inhabitants cut themselves off from the illustrious history of their forefathers, who were the founders of the first civilization of the old world. The strategy or plan or conspiracy of the European was used as follows. If the Moors were ever emancipated or set free in the future, the Moors would remain subjugated or dominated by the European race, who had the sole authority in the classifying system by way of race, which was incorrectly being distinguished as colors, such as so-called black race and white race. The Moors would unknowingly forfeit their rights to true citizenship. The slave classifying system was designed just for that purpose. Through this method, the Moors would not have any rights under the laws governing free national citizens. The Moors, known illegally as black people, would rob themselves of the precious rights of citizenship by accepting and identifying with slave marks of Negro, black, colored. None of those names pertain to a true nation of people. Now, one may wonder, why is the information on this act of the First Continental Congress stripping the Moors of the identity not readily known? The records of this meeting of the First Continental Congress are known as the journals of the First Continental Congress. And they are the records of the daily proceedings of the Congress as kept by the office of Secretary Charles Thompson. The journals were printed contemporaneously in different editions and in several subsequent editions. None of these editions, however, includes the secret journal. Confidential sections of the records, which was not published until 1821. These are how the records appear this day. Yep. Show them the next page, man. Blatant, large portions of the document removed, redacted. What are you trying to hide? But the true history of what happened to our forefathers. Blatant, large segments just taken out. And this is about our history. This complete edition